Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm Tammy Stackelhaus, fibromyalgia coach, author, and founder of the International Fibromyalgia Coaching Institute. The goal of this podcast is to empower you with access to the dream team of experts and coaches I've discovered are key to living the fibro life you love. From the comfort of your own home, and maybe even your pajamas, I'll help you take back control of your life and health. To help out with fibro fog, I always include full show notes and additional resources at fibromyalgiapodcast.com. Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm your coach, Tammy Stackelhaus, and this is episode 151. Today, I'm talking with Coach Kirsten Goldstein about the reasons New Year's resolutions aren't really all that helpful and what to do instead. Kirsten will share a bit of her fibromyalgia story, including how she recently did a week-long hike to Everest Base Camp. Yes, that Everest. We'll also discuss some fibro-friendly ways to set goals that you will actually accomplish and give you some examples of how this goal-setting process works out in real life. And be sure to stay tuned after my conversation with Kirsten for details on our January Fibromyalgia Wellness Summit, Living Well with Fibromyalgia, Real Patients, Expert Advice, Proven Results. This is a free online event, but you do have to register. And I'll have all those details at the end of this episode for you. They'll also be in today's show notes at fibromyalgiapodcast.com/151. Now, let me introduce you to our guest. Kirsten Goldstein is a fitness coach and behavior change expert with over 25 years of experience helping clients worldwide build sustainable fitness and lifestyle habits. Diagnosed with fibromyalgia in 2019, she specializes in guiding others with the condition to rediscover movement in a gentle, empowering way. Her approach focuses on pacing, energy management, and well-being to support a balanced, guilt-free, active lifestyle. Fluent in English and German, Kirsten works with clients internationally. In her free time, she loves traveling, exploring diverse cultures, and searching for the world's best chai latte. As always, I do want to remind you that the information we include in this podcast is not meant to be considered medical advice, nor is it intended to replace consulting with a qualified physician or other healthcare provider. Kirsten and I really do hope that her story will inspire you to think outside the box of what you may have been told is possible for your fibromyalgia healing, and that our goal-setting tips are going to help you accomplish your dreams like they have for Kirsten. Now, here is our conversation. Hi, Kirsten. Welcome. I'm excited to have you here on the podcast.
Hi, Tammy. Happy to be here.
And Happy New Year's Eve.
Yay. Happy New Year.
Today, of course, we're going to be talking about goal setting, but I think before we dive into that, it can be helpful for people to know a little bit about your story. And I think a specific part of your story will be a really great example of the kind of things that you can accomplish when you break things down and you follow a purposeful process in setting your goals and working towards your goals. So let's start at the beginning. When were you diagnosed? How did that come about?
I was diagnosed in October of 2019, so not too long ago. But I think my fibro story started back in 2011. I had some really bad problems with my wrist and then with my elbows, and then it moved into my shoulder, and I went to a couple of orthopedic doctors and they just couldn't find anything. So after a while it went away because I worked on different issues and I tried to not move my hands basically, and magically it disappeared after a couple of months. But then a couple of years later, I got all these problems with my knees and my hip, and I went from one doctor to the next. And you can probably guess the story because I think we've all had that. I kept saying that at this point, like 2013 to 15, I had more appointments in the MRT than other people in the gym. So it was just a constant in and out of doctors' offices because, things hurt here today and in a different part of my body the next day. Nobody could really find anything. And every couple of years, I kind of kicked myself in the butt to start another search for solutions. And so finally, around summer 2019, it was one of those days again where things hurt and I was miserable. And, I knew there needed to be a solution, but I just hadn't found it. And I asked Dr. Google, and Dr. Google said, you have fibromyalgia. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. Never heard about that. And so I searched for a doctor and found one. And then, of course, she diagnosed me straight away with, you have fibromyalgia.
Mm-hmm. And where were you living at the time? You've lived in a lot of different places while I've known you. Where were you then?
I was diagnosed by a doctor in Dubai, so the United Arab Emirates. I moved there from Germany. I'm originally from Germany. So I moved there in 2018, and the health system there is awesome. So I was diagnosed by a really good doctor.
Do you think that it made a difference looking at that time while you lived there in being able to find the help that you needed? Or was it just coincidence, timing, everything else?
I think it was just timing because I was tired of not having a name for this thing that annoyed me. And I have to admit, by the time I was diagnosed at the end of 2019, I had already made a lot of progress. So my worst time was probably between 2015 and 2017. And I had always treated myself with meditation and exercise and healthy eating and resting and that sort of thing. But I knew there needed to be more.
Right, right. And your background is in fitness. And so you probably are a little more in tune with your body than a lot of us at that stage, right? At the beginning.
I would think so, yeah. I mean, I know a lot about the body. I know a lot about the fascia because the fascia is super, super important. I mean, in the last couple of years, people in the fibro community, like, for example, Dr. Ginevra, they have been talking a lot about myofascial release and how the fascia is part of the whole problem. So if your fascia is tight, then, we tend to have more pain and more issues in our body than if the fascia is nice and relaxed. And even when I didn't have my diagnosis, I had foam rollers at home and I had fascia release balls and I had all the tools and I did that on a regular basis. So I think I never developed the intensity of pain that other people have because I know about my body and I know how to read my body and how to respond to what my body is trying to tell me, at least the majority of days, not always.
None of us are perfect, right?
No.
Oh, goodness. So how did your fibromyalgia diagnosis change things for you?
I mean, first I got medication. I only got one medication, so I haven't tried a whole lot. I have to admit that. My doctor back then, she was not really into medication. She was trying to work mostly on my sleep. So she tried to help me with that because, of course, bad sleep has a big impact on fibromyalgia and energy and fatigue and all those sorts of things. So she tried to tackle that initially. She told me to take a couple of supplements and she basically told me, go see this Ayurvedic massage girl and she's amazing and she will help you. And that's what I did for like 3 years. And yeah, that made a big part of my recovery.
Right, right. And I know partway along the way too, like your work changed. That was one of the things that you realized had to change. You want to share a little about that?
Yeah, that was definitely one of the major reasons why I recovered. Back in the days from 2010 to 2017, I owned a gym in Germany. So I owned my own fitness facility and I was teaching some days 7 fitness classes a day. Plus I had a couple of personal training sessions. Plus, I had to clean the whole gym, plus clients, consultations, you name it. We were a small facility, so I didn't have a million shoulders to put,
Right. You were wearing all the hats, right?
I was wearing all the hats. Yeah. Yeah. And that was what made me sick. So at some point, I had to decide to sell the gym and do something different. So I sold the gym in 2017, started working online 100%. That made a huge difference because now I could set my own times. I could take breaks if I needed to. I could take some time to sleep in the afternoon if I needed to. And I could choose my own clients. So
if you're watching this on the video, we have a visitor behind me. Finn has decided he wants to be in the podcast today. So if you're not watching this on video, you can check out the video and watch Finn. Oh, goodness, I'll try to ignore him. So, Kirsten, I know that all those decisions that you made, really changing your lifestyle to be more fibro-friendly, those weren't easy. How did you go through the process of mentally making that shift that would allow for you to make those changes?
I don't know. I just knew I had to change something. If I didn't change things, I wouldn't get better. I mean, I loved my gym, but I also knew that this is what is making me sick. And if I continue like that, I won't get better. I will get worse. So I had to make the change. So that was the first big thing. The second one came a couple of years later. So when I already started working with you in the advisor program and with my coach, I kept saying that I want to work with different kind of people. So even though I had started working online and setting my own hours and working from the comfort of my home, I was still working with regular people, like, the ordinary healthy kind of person, doing personal training, teaching classes to them. So I was still doing physically more than what was good for me. And so again, I had to make a change and say, do I want to continue like that and feel pain every so often? Or do I need to make another change and decide that I don't want to only work with people with fibromyalgia, but I want to focus on them. So I still have, some of my old clients and I love them, but new clients, I really focus more on helping people who have the same history as me or, the same diagnosis, and they really need help.
Mm-hmm. And we thank you for it. So what were some of the things that helped you get to where you are today with your fibromyalgia? I mean, I know you said you had one medication, but I know you've done a lot more than that.
I mean, if we talk about the medical side of things, of course, I took supplements. I still take them, and they actually increased. They did not get less over the years. I think now I'm at the point where I'm actually taking the most ever.
Yeah, same. I can relate to that.
It's crazy. I have a whole cupboard in my kitchen just with medication or supplements. Yeah.
Yep.
But they are very helpful. So to give you more energy or with brain fog or better sleep. So that's, of course, a big part. But I also worked on lifestyle, on nutrition, on taking breaks, on allowing myself to take breaks. That's still a big part for me. Even though I know all these things in theory, it's one thing to know it and the other one to actually do it. So I have to work on this every day to allow myself to lie in my hammock, because that's my happy place. I actually have a hammock in my office.
Oh, I love it. So not just outside in your office.
Yeah, it's in my office. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, my plan is to meditate in my hammock at least once every day. And on most days, I can manage to do that. Others, it just doesn't happen for whatever reason. And that's okay. So I had to work on allowing myself to do or not do certain things and follow through on, the plan I made. I wanted to get healthier and, I tried to do this step by step and not everything at the same time and progress little by little. And if I look back from, like 2017 when I sold my gym to now, end of 24, I've come a long way, and I can pretty much say my fibromyalgia is not there anymore.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. And that little bit by little bit, step by step, like that is everything we're talking about today. And it's so interesting that you basically applied that not just to, I'm going to go do this thing, and so I'm going to set a goal that I'm going to do this thing, but also just your own life and your own health. I think sometimes we forget that it's the same process.
Exactly. You have to start somewhere and then make your way to where you want to go. And, this might be smaller things or larger things. It really depends on the individual. But I think the important thing, or the message that I try to get across, is, just keep going forward and look for solutions. And if you're not as well as you want to be, you need to keep looking.
Right. Yes, there are answers out there. There are always things that we can try. For sure. Now, you recently had a very big goal that you were working towards. Why don't you share a little bit about that goal? And then also let's talk about that process of breaking things down, setting that goal, and then ultimately achieving that goal.
Yeah, I recently did a very big hike. I had an athletic goal to become fit enough to do a 9-day hike in altitude. So my husband had that dream of hiking together with me to a special place. And the last couple of years, he always did big hikes once every year, but by himself, because I kept telling him, I'm not fit enough, I'm in pain, I can't hike for a week or even longer. And, you enjoy yourself, go with the group and have fun. And, I'm at home, I do my thing. And he kept talking to me and saying, hey, I know you can do this, and I believe you're strong enough. And, he didn't really want to acknowledge that I had this thing called fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
But basically, he kept talking about that he wanted to go to Everest Base Camp in Nepal. And at one point, he kind of got me, and I said yes. And so a couple of weeks ago,
just the right moment, and you gave in.
So a couple of weeks ago, we went to Everest Base Camp, and to make this short, we made it.
Yes. And the thing that I think was most interesting about that hike that you did was afterwards, we were talking about it, and you said, it wasn't as bad as I thought that it was going to be, largely because you were prepared, right?
Yeah. The thing is, I was not physically prepared. I was mentally prepared. And looking back, that was even more important. I mean, I have been hiking all my life. So I do have experience going into the mountain and hiking in different countries and hiking in different terrains. But the last 6 weeks before the hike started, I was planning on doing the majority of my training. And I developed 6 weeks before the hike started plantar fasciitis on my feet, which is like the worst thing you can develop when you're going on a hike. So I was really annoyed by my body that it sent me plantar fasciitis. I would have happily accepted shoulder pain or neck pain or anything like that, but
don't
nothing
mess with
on
my
the feet.
Yeah,
don't mess with my feet. So basically, my training was cut short, and I did not do anything for 6 weeks. And I pretty much went into the hike. The first day was the first day I had actually walked more than to the supermarket in 6 weeks. So it was a bit of a gamble. And all I could do in those weeks before was work on my abs because they didn't hurt. Like to get some general strength. And I worked on my mental preparation. So I visualized myself doing the hike. I visualized every day that I would make it, that I would be at the top of Everest Base Camp, eat the chocolate that I brought, which I usually never buy because it's such a good chocolate. I would eat it all the day. So it was a real treat. So I visualized that I can do it. And I also visualized that this is going to be hard. So I imagined all the things that could go wrong, but not to stress myself, but to prepare myself. So I really tried to mentally come up with all the different scenarios why I would not be able to continue or why this would be super, super hard. Like what would happen if I got super bad muscle pain, or if the fibro pain came back, or if my feet hurt like hell, or what would happen if the weather was not nice, if it rained for 9 days, or snowstorms, or the beds were so hard. So whatever could go wrong or make this trip miserable, I prepared mentally for it. And I think that really made me super, super strong. And because nothing happened, the weather was perfect. My feet enjoyed the hike. I had zero muscle pain. I did not get any stomach bugs from the local food. It was honestly a walk in the park.
I love that. I love that. And I think you mentioned too that, there were people on the hike with you that had a harder time than you did.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Most people, had a harder time than me. And that was definitely not because I exercised a lot before, quite the opposite.
Right, right. With the plantar fasciitis, it was crucial that you didn't train before, right? You needed to give your feet that time to heal. And I think it's such a challenge, but also such a magical thing when we can get that balance right. Rest when we need to rest and work when we need to work. Like our bodies need both, and finding that balance can be a challenge.
Also, looking back, honestly, I think my body knew me exactly, and it sent me plantar fasciitis so that I would not train before like some crazy person. Because I would have gone into the mountains and hiked and gone to the gym and done this and that and walked a lot just because I thought that's how I needed to prepare. And my body knew that is not the right way to prepare for a person with fibromyalgia. So I think my body wanted me to be super rested, and then I could tackle it. So I think my body was quite clever. I didn't think so at the time, but looking back,
Right.
I think it was good.
Right, right. And I love that. I love just that reframing. I think all of us can do that whatever's going on in the moment is actually a gift that is working towards our benefit, not something that's there to hold us back and be terrible, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, you learn from everything. If something is not going in your favor, you learn from it. And, if that ever happens again or something similar, or you're in a similar situation, you know how to react.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. So let's dig into some goal setting. And we've kind of touched on little bits and pieces through our conversation here. Things like setting your goal, visualizing where you're going to be, breaking things down into small steps. But let's talk about some practical nitty-gritty type things. There's somebody listening who has something that they want to accomplish. Where do you start?
Oh, since we're at the beginning of the year, most people are familiar with the New Year's resolutions, and I hate those, honestly.
Yes.
Do you have any New Year's resolutions, or?
I do not make New Year's resolutions. I just don't think they're helpful.
Yeah, I don't have any either. I make plans, but I don't have any New Year's resolutions because for most people, they're too big and they're just too ambitious and they're unrealistic. So most people don't last very long. They last for a week or 2 or 3. And then those super ambitious goals, like I will lose 10 kg by the end of January or whatever, they're just thrown out the door because it just doesn't work. We have a life to live and things to do and health issues and whatever, kids that get sick. And, we can't stick with those ambitious goals. So this whole approach of all or nothing is not working, not for the ordinary healthy person, and for a person with chronic illnesses like us, it's definitely not the right thing to do. So I think we need to make small steps. I think we can still set goals, but I don't want to call those New Year's resolutions. Like they can be set any time of the year. It does not have to be the 1st of January. And those small steps, they can be like a guide, I think. You work towards something. So you set yourself a goal and then, break it down into small steps and even smaller steps, and then you start. And bit by bit, you can make your way towards your goal, but also be clear that there might be setbacks. There might be days where you're just too tired or you don't have time or something else happens and you can't do the thing that you had in your mind. And that's okay. That's how life is. But you also know that the next day or the day after, or when you feel well enough, you'll continue. So I think that's the difference. You'll continue even if something happens. That's the most important thing. But if someone asks, like, how do I actually set a goal? I would always go back to the SMART theory. I think most people are familiar with that or have heard about it, that we set goals oftentimes with the acronym called SMART. So the S stands for specific, the M for measurable, the A for achievable, the R for relevant, and the T for time bound. And so if you set yourself a goal, then you can always check and see if that fits into those categories. And just go from there and put less pressure on yourself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think a lot of things in that SMART acronym are also why I have trouble with New Year's resolutions. The S, right? Like so often people will make a New Year's resolution of things like, I'm going to exercise more this year. It's kind of too vague, right? Like what does more mean? 1 minute or?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the A for attainable, we have to remember we live in fibro bodies, right? So it's not just, is this thing possible for anyone to accomplish, but is it possible for me in the body that I have right now, today, not the body I wish I had or the body I used to have, but today's body, right?
Exactly. And just to give an example from myself, from my own life, like for the last couple of years, every year in January, I do a month of sugar-free. So no sugar, like no artificial sugar. Fruits are fine, but that's it. And I started, I think, 3 or 4 years ago by setting myself the goal that the first week in January, I would be sugar-free. So 1 week, 7 days of no sugar. And that was very specific, it was measurable because 7 days had a start date and an end date. It was definitely achievable because 7 days, it's not long, it's super short. It was definitely relevant because with all those Christmas cookies and New Year's parties and, everything that we eat in December and the whole year, it was definitely relevant to my health to cut down on sugar. And it was time bound because 7 days, like I said, it has a start and an end. And after those 7 days, I noticed, hey, this is actually not so hard. It was actually quite easy to be sugar-free for 7 days. So I extended for another week. And then I finished 2 weeks and I was like, well, this was not so hard. Let's do a third week. But I didn't set out to do a whole month right from the start.
First time,
I started with baby steps. And the second year and the third year, it was much easier because I already knew how to do this whole thing, how to bake without sugar, because I had looked for recipes. Like I had made amazing brownies without any kind of sugar. So, I treated myself. I just did it smarter. And now it's no big deal. And it's just part of my start into the new year.
Yes. I love that. I think we have big goals and we forget to break them down into smaller, not just the steps to do to accomplish the goal, but just smaller goals in general, right? Like it's not just, okay, I'm still going to do it for a month, but here's how I prepare. Here's the steps of that, but breaking it down into a smaller actual goal that you can then check off that you accomplished it at the end, right? Because I think part of what we have to do with fibromyalgia, and really there's lots of people that fall into this that don't have fibromyalgia, but we need to rebuild our confidence that we can actually do things. So a lot of times when I'm working with clients, my goal with them isn't just to help them accomplish the thing, but also to help restore that confidence of, I can decide to do something and actually do it. So we break things down into sometimes stupid small pieces where it's like you can't help but get, check, did that, because it does build that confidence. And then you can make bigger goals and eventually, climb to Everest Base Camp.
Exactly. And again, what's really important for me also with that sugar New Year's resolution, even though I don't call it a New Year's resolution, it's just a plan, a part of my healing journey, is that mental aspect. Like I prepare myself mentally for there is no sugar in January. And if I'm invited to a party, I know there is no sugar in January because it is January. But last year, I have to admit, I did not do it in January because my life was all over the place. We were just moving back to Germany. So I did not have the mental space to do something like that. So I didn't do it, but I knew I would do it as soon as my life has settled down, everything is calmer. And so it was perfectly fine for me to do it in April. So I allowed myself the change. I knew that I will do it at some point in 2024, but January, as in the years before, it was just not the right time. I would not have lasted for 2 days.
Right. And I think that insight is such an important piece too, that it's not, that goal wasn't worthy of accomplishing, or, I just can't do it, but just recognizing like the A, right? It wasn't attainable in that moment. And to be able to change to another month, we're still going to do it. We're just not going to do it now. One of the sayings that I used to hear all the time is that we have a deadline, right? But that deadline is written in sand. It is a movable deadline that can be shifted depending on if we need to.
Exactly. And I think that's part of this whole like treating yourself with kindness and with respect and being friendly to yourself that a lot of people with a chronic illness have kind of lost or forgotten. Like we always talk down to ourselves. Like I've noticed that with some of my clients, they talk so bad about themselves and tell me all the things they cannot do or they haven't been able to do lately. And I'm like, hey, stop. Focus on the wins and focus on the good things and be kind to yourself and take baby steps if you can't take larger steps.
Yes. I love that. And that is such a challenge for all of us. I had a friend who her New Year's resolution, or at least for the first month, was to not say anything mean about anybody else, including the person who cut her off in traffic or, whatever. And I looked at her and I said, are you including yourself in that?
Oh, that's a good one.
Because, we don't, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Treat yourself like you would treat your best friend.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And that includes like being kind in how we set these goals, being kind in how the word that's coming to mind is enforce, right? How we compel ourselves to do the things to meet the goal, right? Like there is a lot of times that we set worthy goals that really are there to help us improve our lives, but we're not very nice about how we get there.
And I think one thing I've noticed a lot with people is they have too many goals at the same time or too many new things they take on at the same time. So they want to go gluten-free and they want to exercise more and they want to change this habit and stop smoking and see all the doctors and do blah. And, that's just too much. You have to do one thing at a time. And once that one is working well for you, it's become a routine, a habit, then you can add another one. And once that one has become a routine, you don't have to think about doing something, then you can add another one. It's kind of like what we do with medication. We don't add 3 new medications at the same time. We start with one. And if that one is working well, we add another one and then another one. So one after the other and not everything together.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's overwhelming, but also it's ineffective, right? Like you just can't put all your attention all the places, right?
Exactly. And then, things come up like your kids get sick or you have to work longer or you get sick, you have a fibro flare. And then all your different plans are thrown out the window. But if you only did one, you can pick it up next time you feel better or, life goes back to normal. It's much easier to pick that up again than if you have to restart 5 different things.
Right. Yeah. And there's also the greater chance that you'll be able to continue it through these hard times because it's not so overwhelming, right? It doesn't take up the same amount of brain space or body energy or whatever else. Like it's a smaller load. So it often, I have found, feels like, okay, I could still do that thing even though life is chaos.
Like I always say, if you set new goals, what would be the smallest part of that goal that you can do on your worst day? Like when you're lying in bed and you feel super miserable, what one thing, a tiny little version of your usual routine or your usual goal, what can you do on that day? And if we take exercise as an example, if usually you want to exercise, let's say 2 or 3 times a week, 10 minutes or 15 minutes, that would be your goal. But on days where you don't feel well and you have to stay in bed, what one exercise can you do? Just a couple of repetitions, that makes you feel better. Like, can you circle your shoulders or can you lift the shoulders? When you're lying on your back, can you move your knees left and right? It's super tiny. And I assume that most people can do that on their worst days and then tick the box of, I have exercised today.
Yes. And I think habits are such a big part of this. I mean, you've kind of mentioned that a few times, but for me, goal setting and habit forming are like, I don't know, yin and yang. They go together and we need them both.
Mm-hmm. They just belong together. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I mean, because the idea with habits, I mean, I live with an engineer, right? So I think in computer terms often, but I think of habits like programs that can run in the background that I don't have to consciously think of. It just happens. So like at this stage, you being sugar-free in January really is a habit, and you don't necessarily have to like consciously think of it every time you go to eat something. Oh, I need to remember not to have sugar, right? It's just part of what you do. Brushing your teeth might be a habit. Washing your hands after you go to the bathroom might be a habit, right? These are things that we do almost unconsciously. And the more we can set that up in our lives, the whole lot easier it is, right?
And also, it's much easier to add new good habits than to get rid of bad old habits.
Yes.
Like it's much harder to, like when you want to improve your diet, your nutrition, which is super important for people with chronic illnesses, that we eat healthy foods and fresh foods. And, it's much harder to get rid of the French fries and the burgers and the Coke than to add, eating fruits here or drinking water. Those things are just easier incorporated into our daily lives.
Yes. I like to think of it as adding in the good things and they kind of squeeze out the bad ones.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So why don't we talk about like just some specific tips that you might give to someone as we kind of start to wrap up here? What are some tips that you would give the person who's like, okay, you've convinced me. I'm not making a New Year's resolution. I'm going to actually set a goal. I know kind of where to start. What are some tips along the way?
I think firstly, the person has to think like, what is really making a difference for me? Maybe not so much like what is the most fun for me, but what's the most important thing that would help me feel better at this point in time? And that's not so easy, especially if people are playmakers like the two of us. I mean, who like to have things fun and, enjoyable.
And we have a hard time with the things that are routine. And like sometimes those things are the ones that are the best for us, right? Like brushing your teeth is not necessarily fun.
Yeah, but the two of us, we like to start with the easy things, things that are fun, that we can enjoy. But that doesn't make the biggest difference. So think about like when you start the new year, what really should change in your life and what can have a big impact. So maybe visualize a bigger goal, but then break it down and break it down even more and even more. So make it super, super tiny, that whatever you want to start in January or later in the year, you can do it on your worst day. So whatever that worst day might be for you. So that by the end of the day, you can put a check mark on, yes, I've done a tiny little thing towards my goal. And then also celebrate your wins, no matter how tiny they are. I think we often forget that. We always say, oh, I didn't do this or that today. But you did a lot of other things. Maybe you rested. That's a win instead of working. So celebrate yourself for doing things or not doing things that get you a little bit closer towards your goal of feeling better, being healthier, doing all the things that you eventually want to do again.
And that's part of that, treating yourself like you would treat your best friend, right? If your best friend was looking at you and saying, oh, Kirsten, but I didn't do all these things that I meant to do, you would look at her and say, yeah, but look at all the things you did do, right? And that's okay. And there's tomorrow. But we don't give ourselves that encouraging voice, right? So this is your reminder to be kind to yourself in that process as well.
And also to cut yourself some slack, things don't have to be serious all the time, Do things with joy and a bit of fun, and then things are a lot easier.
Yes, spoken as a true playmaker.
Even hard things like being sugar-free. Like I found recipes on how to make brownies without sugar and putting some fun back in my desserts.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And finding that in, it can sometimes be as simple as like, remember those chore charts we had as kids, right? And you put the sticker on when you like did the thing. Like sometimes that's all we need. I use an app on my phone called Streaks, and I love marking off when I've done the thing, right? Like there's just that. I love it turns the color. And if I do all of them, it turns gold.
I'm the same. I have this meditation app and, it tells you how many days you've meditated in a row. And I love it when it tells me, oh, you have meditated 7 days in a row. And then I'm not meditating for a day and then I have to start at 0 again. Like, wow.
Right.
So these things encourage us to keep going.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, Playmaker, what is this thing they keep talking about? We're talking about your fibromyalgia wellness style. And this is a quiz that I developed to sort of help you figure out what your personality is and how you approach your health and how you approach your fibromyalgia. And so if you're interested in finding out if you're a playmaker or a ponderer or a perseverer, or actually, I think we used a different word for that. But anyway, you can go to fibroquiz.com and you can take your own quiz. There's even an email series that'll teach you how to apply that to your life. And I think that knowing who you are and how you approach life is also key in accomplishing the things that you want to accomplish. Because when we're fighting against our natural instincts, it is just so much harder.
I've had a couple of clients lately who were perfectionists, and just knowing they are perfectionists made a huge difference for them because they could suddenly see all the things in their life they were trying to do perfect. And their goal was to be less perfect, rather than doing things 150%, 85 or 90% was just as fine. And yeah, the wellness style quiz is amazing.
Yeah, I think it's super, super helpful. So as we wrap up here, Kirsten, I know you mentioned before we started recording that you've got a free gift for our listeners. I'd love for you to share about that. And then just also kind of, speak from your heart to the person listening who is thinking about, how they're going to start making changes in the new year.
I have actually 2 gifts for the listeners.
2 gifts?
Yes.
More.
Yeah. One is a downloadable PDF with 10 tips to incorporate movement into your daily life, but fibro-friendly, so you're not getting any flare-ups, you don't feel overwhelmed. And the second one, like once you've read that PDF and you're like, okay, let me start with, exercising more, being more active, if that's one of your goals for the new year, then I have a 30-day program. It's called the Starter Program, and that is specifically geared towards people with fibromyalgia to get started little by little, step by step, one exercise every day. You're not working out more than a minute. You can do some of the exercises in bed or in a chair, and we'll have a special code, and people can use that for free.
I love that. So often I find with my clients and even with myself that the beginner level is too advanced. Whether we're talking exercise or, anything else, right? With fatigue and brain fog and pain and all of those things, it feels like even the beginner level is too hard. And I love that you've made something that is actually attainable for folks. So thank you.
I think some of the exercises, they can be done on people's worst days. So
yeah,
it is super fibro-friendly.
That's great. And so what would you say to the person then who is thinking about making some changes in 2025 on how they can, just some encouragement, just speak from your heart?
I think just get started with something. If you have been procrastinating, taking care of your health lately, just pick something and get started. I mean, you need to make changes, and those changes sometimes can be hard, and sometimes it's not easy to change your life, no matter how small the steps are, because you have to, talk to your family, you have to make changes at work, you have to change your diet. So there are a lot of things, and it can feel overwhelming. So I would just say start somewhere and make your way forward, progress slowly, and at some point you'll feel better. And I also think at some point it is important to ask for help. So no matter if that's a friend or a colleague or someone or even a coach, some things you cannot tackle on your own. It needs that external view, because sometimes people can see things you're doing wrong or that you could do different. And I think that view from outside can be very beneficial for people to not only get started, but also to continue doing things so they can actually progress with their health.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I was going to bring the coaching up if you hadn't, but a lot of times it can be so helpful, like you said, to have somebody on the outside who isn't invested in the outcome necessarily. Like it's not going to change my life at all if you're sugar-free for a month or if you're not. Where sometimes the people in your lives, friends, family, it does affect them. And so I think it can be super helpful to have that unbiased outside perspective in helping you set those goals, holding you accountable for the things that you want to accomplish and all of that. And so for you listening, of course, you can always sign up for a consultation with a coach through our Find a Coach page. It's findafibrocoach.com. Kirsten is one of the people that you can meet with. Right now, today, you will find her under the student coach section, but she is this close to finishing her certification. So if you don't see her there, look in the certified coach section. That's where she will be moving to next. And just see what it's like to work with somebody who can help you accomplish your goals, but who also understands the fibro side of it and understands the difference between I didn't get it done because I was being lazy and I didn't get it done because I was in a flare. And that's a big difference that not everybody gets.
You are so right. And that's a very big difference. Lazy is not the same as, I was in pain last night or I didn't sleep. It makes a big difference in how we go about doing things. And to have someone by your side who actually gets the difference is super, super valuable. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. This is a fun conversation. And for you listening, make sure you hang on for a minute or two. I'm going to have more information on our Fibromyalgia Wellness Summit that's coming at the end of January. So I'll have more information on that in just a minute. And that wraps up my conversation with Kirsten Goldstein. A couple additional resources for you. First of all, just a reminder that you can discover your fibromyalgia wellness style at fibroquiz.com. If you want deeper insights into how your wellness style can help you better manage your fibromyalgia, avoid flares, all those things, be sure to sign up to have your free advanced profile sent to you. This is totally optional, but the information in the advanced profile is really where the magic is. You can also check out episode 133, Embrace Your Fibromyalgia Wellness Style, if you want more information on that. We'll have links to that in today's show notes at fibromyalgiapodcast.com/151. I also mentioned earlier that I am hosting a free Fibromyalgia Wellness Summit at the end of January. If you're not familiar with a, quote, summit, it's simply a free series of talks with experts around a specific topic. The topic for our summit is Living Well with Fibromyalgia, Real Patients, Expert Advice, Proven Results. And if you've attended other summits in the past, this one won't be anything like those. There really are three big ways our summit is different. First, every single one of our speakers is someone who has fibromyalgia and who has found ways to get better. Most of our speakers are nearly symptom-free, while a few of us, like me, have our fibromyalgia fully in remission, which means no fibromyalgia pain or fatigue. So yes, we are experts in our particular topic that we're speaking about, but before we became experts, we were patients just like you. Second, we are keeping this super fibro-friendly with just one speaker each day. Instead of being overwhelmed with multiple talks and speakers each day, we are keeping it super simple. Every day, you'll receive one educational talk plus a second recording, which is an interview between me and that guest speaker. This will give you a chance to learn more about their fibromyalgia story, things that they've done to improve their fibromyalgia symptoms. Plus, I'm doing a fun lightning round with 20 questions for each speaker. Lastly, we are doing this summit as a private podcast. This means you are going to be able to enjoy the summit the same way you're enjoying the Fibromyalgia podcast right now. The summit will be a separate show in your favorite podcast app, and you will specifically have to sign up for it to add it. But once you've done those few steps, each day's talks and interviews are going to show up right on your device, just like a new podcast episodes. This means you can listen to the summit while you go for a walk, do the dishes, lie in bed, rest. We are unchaining you from your computer so you can enjoy our talks when and where you wish. Now, as I said, this is a free event, but you do need to sign up to get the private podcast added to your podcast app. Registration is open now. Just go to fibrowellnesssummit.com. And make sure you get all 3 S's right in the middle there. It's fibrowellnesssummit.com. We'll link to that in today's show notes for you as well. And for those of you who want the extra goodies, of course, we have a VIP all access pass, and you can purchase that, and it will give you access to our VIP green room. This is a private Facebook group where you can interact with all of our speakers, with me, and with the other attendees. It's a great way for you to experience the community that I talk about here on the podcast. VIP access also includes some extra classes, some perks, and extra gifts from our speakers. To sign up as a VIP, if you do that before the event begins on January 20th, and you can get a discounted rate. But again, this is totally optional. You can absolutely register for free for the basic summit event that includes all of our guest speakers and all of their talks. We'll have the link in today's show notes at fibromyalgiapodcast.com/151. And now for today's listener shout out. This is from Deborah, who shared one of my posts on Facebook. And she says, if you have not checked out the resources from Tammy Stackelhaus, check out her page. She has a book, which is available as a free download, a podcast, and runs a Fibro Coaching Institute. Her resources have been super helpful to me, and I've used them all to understand, for support, and to navigate this windy, hilly fibro road. Thanks so much, Deborah, and I'm so glad you found the resources helpful. And for you listening, be sure and check out those resources that she mentioned. We have those all available at fibromyalgiapodcast.com, including the brand new Tammy's Favorite Things list for 2024. And this includes some goodies that, honestly, I just would not want to live my life without. Today, I want to highlight an item from that list. This is the number 3 thing on my list, wide open socks. Sounds like a simple thing, right? Socks. And I'll tell you, as a fibro person with wide feet living in a larger body, I have not worn normal socks in probably a decade. Most socks are way too tight around my ankles. Even though my fibro is in remission, when I wear too tight socks for too long, I can start to feel my legs start to hurt, and I don't want that pain to spread. So for the last 10 years, I've been wearing ankle socks with the ankles cut to make more space for my leg. It's not the cutest or the most professional look, I have to say, but it was what I needed to do as a fibro person to make sure I did not have extra fibro pain. Enter wide open socks. Again, it's the simple things, guys. These socks are made for wide feet and wider legs. Wide Open was actually kind enough to send me a pair of socks to try, and I freaking love them. I immediately ordered 2 weeks worth of socks from them. I have thrown out all of my cut up socks, and now I have real socks. They're wide enough to be comfortable, but they're also snug enough to not fall down, which is also important. They're made from merino wool, and honestly, guys, my toes are so happy to finally be warm this winter. If you want to check out Wide Open Socks and the other 6 favorite things on my list, go to today's show notes and sign up for Tammy's Favorite Things. This is a free email you can sign up for, and it even contains discount codes for many of the items. Just visit today's show notes at fibromyalgiapodcast.com/151. And that wraps up another episode of the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm your coach, Tammy Stackelhaus. For daily doses of hope, inspiration, and practical advice, come hang out with me on Facebook. Visit facebook.com/fibrocoach to find my personal coaching page and connect with me directly. To find the show notes, additional resources, or to schedule a consultation with me or one of my coaches, visit fibromyalgiapodcast.com.